The amazing secret of a millionaire doctor that transformed everything for her in 30 days. Dr. Emily Carter strolled through the town square, her mind a tumultuous sea of regret and longing. Just months ago, she was the town's golden girl, adored for her healing hands and heart. Now, with the scandal echoing through the streets, she felt like a ghost haunting her own life. The whispers chased her, pricking at her every thought. She's not the hero they once believed, they said, slicing through her resolve. Behind the facade of a successful medical career was a truth she could no longer shy away from. Everything she had built lay in ruins. As she stood outside her childhood home, a modest structure eclipsed by time, a wave of disappointment washed over her. This place, once filled with laughter and warmth, now seemed to smother her with shadows of her past failures. The creaky floors groaned beneath her feet as she stepped into the familiar chaos of underwhelming memories, reminders of family dinners and warm summer nights that felt more like a cruel joke now. She was supposed to be a hero, yet the air crackled with her unfulfilled potential and the weight of her family's expectations. With trembling hands, she rummaged through her late grandfather's belongings. An old leather-bound medical journal caught her eye, dusty and forgotten. As she opened it, her breath hitched. Each handwritten note a fragment of a long-lost dream, an innovative technique her grandfather had developed, one that was never recognized. She felt a mix of grief and determination swell inside her. Could this forgotten legacy breathe life back into her shattered existence? The mere thought ignited a flicker of hope in her less than bright reality. But just as quickly, doubt crept in. What if this was just another fool's errand? The townspeople had already turned their backs on her. Did she really have it in her to take on the medical establishment that had cast her out? The memories of her fall from grace were stark against the backdrop of her grandfather's aspirations. She hesitated, caught between the haunting past and a potential future that shimmered just beyond her reach. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Emily's resolve hardened as memories of her grandfather's patient determination resurfaced. Inspired, she sought out Clara, a retired nurse who had known her grandfather well. Their meetings felt like clutching at straws, but Clara's insights brought a renewed vibrance. Yet the thrill of reawakening her passion was met with a dark tide. Whispers from the broader medical community swirled around her. The same powerful figure she once revered now perceived her as a threat. The familiar sting of anxiety seared her insides. Shadows of threats lurked in the periphery, foreboding reminders of the price of ambition. It all crescendoed into a culmination of fear and desperation. She stood on the precipice of reclaiming her life or getting lost in the descent once more. In that defining moment, torn between clinging to the safety of hiding and the unpredictable fight for her grandfather's legacy, she wrestled with a question that echoed loudly in her mind. Could she truly grapple with the unyielding forces threatening to silence her? The stakes grew higher, and with every passing second, the anguish of uncertainty tightened its grip, propelling her toward a dangerous choice. Determined to push through her fears, Emily found herself navigating new terrain. The journal's yellowed pages fueled her late-night research sessions. She immersed herself in her grandfather's notes, emboldened by the prospect of reviving a paradigm-shifting technique long before its time. This wasn't merely about salvaging her career. It was an opportunity to honor a legacy that had been buried beneath layers of neglect. However, the weight of her decision pressed heavily on her conscience. Each insight she found stirred a sense of vulnerability intertwined with deeper resolve. The community that had once celebrated her now viewed her through a lens tainted by scandal. She needed to break that cycle of perception. The question pulsing relentlessly in her mind morphed into action. What if she could prototype her grandfather's technique, redefine its purpose, and, in doing so, reclaim her narrative? With each brilliant stroke of inspiration, Emily began jotting down plans for her prototype. Her visceral connection to her grandfather's work anchored her spirit, pushing aside self-doubt as she threw herself into the project. Yet, nameless fears still loomed over her. She questioned her ability to resurrect not just a method, but her entire identity as a physician. Could she stand against the very system that had ostracized her? Those thoughts hit her hard when she first presented her idea to Clara. They sat in a dimly lit cafe, steam swirling in the air. Emily's heart raced as she detailed her ambitions, leaning into her mentor's seasoned experience. Clara's expression shifted from skepticism to intrigue, her hands clasping the table as if to anchor herself in the moment. "Emily, your grandfather understood the importance of innovation, but he also knew the heat of dissent," Clara warned, a firm tone laced with concern. "This could very well draw attention from those who still look down on you." "You mean the sharks?" Emily interjected. "What's the alternative? Allow them to dictate my life? Every moment I hesitate is another moment wasted." Clara chuckled softly, impressed by the fire igniting within her once timid protégé. "You've changed. If you're willing to face them, you must prepare for their wrath. They won't just allow you to reclaim your place without a fight." The meeting planted the seed of strategy in Emily's mind, intensifying her urgency. She dissected her grandfather's method, passionate yet wary. Her task grew twofold: to innovate and to defend her pursuit against those who would undermine her at every move. The fear of failure transformed into motivation, shifting her as she drafted a robust proposal for the medical community. Days crossed into weeks as Emily built a plan sturdy enough to withstand scrutiny. She rejected moments of doubt and instead channeled them into a fierce determination to rise above her adversities. Still, the looming shadow of opposition hung just above her head. Faint whispers turned unsettling murmurs of dissent. Late one evening, while reviewing her assembled draft, a cold shiver crept down her spine. What she had once perceived as a whisper transformed into an unmistakable voice echoing through her thoughts. The time had come to face the giants that would stop at nothing to silence her. This was no longer merely a battle for her grandfather's legacy. It was a fight for her own future. As sleep eluded her, Emily's resolve deepened. With every passing doubt, she felt the fire of conviction burning brighter within her core. She wouldn't let fear dictate her next move. Tomorrow, she would submit her proposal. But when the sun began to rise on that fateful day, her phone rang. The voice on the other end was unexpected and chilling, stirring a maelstrom of consequences she had never envisioned. The stakes had just elevated, and the very ground she stood on felt dangerously unstable. Emily stared at her phone as if it were a snake ready to strike. The caller ID blinked back at her, a name that once felt familiar but now conjured intense discomfort. Dr. Matthews, the director of the medical board that had spearheaded her public downfall. A mixture of dread and defiance surged inside her as she hesitated, grappling with what this call could mean for the fragile plans she had woven around her grandfather's legacy. With a deep breath, she answered, Dr. Matthews. Emily, we need to discuss your recent proposal. You've stirred quite the buzz. His tone was smooth, almost too cordial, as if he were rehearsing the lines of diplomacy while wielding a blade beneath the table. What buzz? She countered, heart racing. I haven't officially submitted anything yet. Precisely, he chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. But your extracurricular activities haven't gone unnoticed. Your efforts to resurrect your grandfather's work are ambitious, to say the least. Some might even call them reckless. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She didn't want to show weakness, yet she could almost feel the chilling shadow of skepticism encasing her. I'm not reckless, Dr. Matthews. I'm committed to advancing medical practice. Sure you are, he replied dismissively. But remember, there are stakeholders at play here. There's history between your family and the board. Your grandfather's methods were largely dismissed for a reason, and your association with them could have repercussions far beyond what you might anticipate. Inside, Emily wrestled with the dual pangs of anger and fear. Did he really think he could deter her with veiled threats? I'm not backing down, she asserted, her voice shaky but resolute. If anything, I'm more determined than ever to prove its validity. Matthews's laughter rang through the line, cold and mocking. You're entitled to your ambition, Emily, but let's be clear. You won't have a platform to prove anything if you don't play by the rules. Consider our history carefully. The call ended, leaving Emily drowning in a mix of indignation and disquiet. She felt the weight of his words, like a noose tightening around her aspirations. But what she also realized, a flicker of something powerful ignited within her. The outside world could judge her, discard her legacy, but it was up to her to shape the narrative now. Determined, she set to work once more. She knew she needed allies, individuals who would support and believe in her vision. Networking felt foreign to her, yet it soon became motivator and method. She dove into the contacts stored in her phone, crafting messages to old colleagues, seeking out those who might voice their support for her resurrection of her grandfather's technique. Each outreach became an exercise in vulnerability. At first she met silence, then skepticism. A few were outright dismissive. You're wasting your time. Just let it go, Emily, came one message that stung more than expected. But for every rejection, another door creaked open. Dr. Caldwell, an esteemed figure who had once worked under her grandfather, replied positively, intrigued by her ambition. They scheduled a meeting, and the excitement at the prospect of finding an ally flooded her with renewed purpose. This connection could be the breakthrough she needed. Yet, as Emily prepared for their meeting, a nagging thought clung to the edges of her mind. Could she truly weather the storm brewing against her? The concept of confrontation gnawed at her, engaging her more deeply into her defenses. Was she reaching for something unattainable, risking everything she had to prove herself? The clock ticked menacingly as she finalized her presentation. In a moment of quiet reflection, she captured her thoughts in her journal, seconds away from laying the first pieces of her legitimate comeback. But before she could write another word, another ping from her phone disrupted her thoughts. This time, it wasn't an old colleague, but a warning from an unknown number. You're playing with fire, Emily. Stay away from the past. The implications rattled her to her core. It was clear now, they wouldn't let her move freely. She had pulled their attention, and she was about to face the giants in her fight for legacy and identity. Would she continue her pursuit, or could this warning be the catalyst for another, even greater decision? Emily's mind raced, her heart hammering as she locked her phone, suppressing a shiver. The ominous warning threatened to unravel what she had painstakingly begun to rebuild. She had felt momentum building, a surge of potential leaping from the pages of her grandfather's notes into a form she could shape. And now this shadowy intrusion threatened to plunge her into the very darkness she sought to escape. She paced the dimly lit room, her fingers absently tracing the edge of her desk. Each step echoed with uncertainty. What if these were the first winds of a storm designed to drown her aspirations? The thought stung, as did the palpable fear of failure. Emily knew she had to execute her plan flawlessly, and that failure could mean not just a personal loss, but a striking blow against the legacy of her grandfather. With Dr. Caldwell's meeting looming, she decided that every moment counted. Every message she composed should affirm her commitment and bolster her newfound determination. She fingered her laptop, pulling up her presentation once again. A kaleidoscope of her grandfather's medical practices lay before her, a landscape ripe for exploration. Emphasizing the transformative potential his groundbreaking techniques could provide felt crucial. She needed to imbue her words with conviction. At the same time, though, there was an inexplicable fear coursing through her, igniting nagging thoughts of inadequacy. Could she make a case to revitalize an approach shadowed by controversy? Each statistic felt like a double-edged sword, illuminating both the flaws and the brilliance of her grandfather's methodologies. As she pieced together the draft, she stumbled upon a section detailing not just the historical significance of the work, but the ethical dilemmas attached to it. Here she saw a reflection not only of her grandfather's brilliance, but also of the aspect of medicine that questioned morality and progress. The revelation rattled Emily. This could be her strategic entry point in discussions. Acknowledging the mistakes of the past while illuminating their relevance today could be the balance she needed. She began to compose the intro slide, and as the words flowed, something within her grew stronger. This was not merely a presentation to others, it was a declaration of her resolve. The doubts could push her toward acquiescence or ignite a fire for revolution. She chose the latter. A glance at the clock made her pulse quicken. She needed to act quickly. While she was immersed in her work, she sensed that her initial attempts at outreach were merely footnotes to the greater narrative she was constructing. Each text she had sent, each contact she'd approached, had served to broaden her foundation. But now she craved the more complex support of individuals who shared her ethos. Pushing the laptop aside, she decided to create a list, a proactive outreach of professionals she could believe would stand behind her vision. Each name conjured memories of conversations, laughter, or debates that inspired her. These were people who had once firmly stood by her grandfather's teachings. They might still harbor the same respect for his intellect, the same interest in alternative avenues in medical practice. With her list forming, her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Dr. Caldwell. "Looking forward to our meeting. Let's make it impactful." The simplicity of the message reignited her anticipation. She could not approach this as a desperate plea. It must be an opportunity to showcase her evolution as a professional, a chance to demonstrate how far she had come since the previous chapter of her life, to embrace innovation while validating the principles learned from her grandfather. As she took a deep breath, ready to envelop herself in the rhythm of empowerment, another notification flashed across her screen. A second warning, equally chilling. "You've stirred the hornet's nest. Now you must face the swarm." Emily's muscles tensed instinctively. The stakes felt staggeringly high, but beneath the weight of fear was an ember of audacity. If she could face her past, build her present, and ascend into the future with her grandfather's legacy intact, then perhaps, just perhaps, she would emerge stronger than ever. The moment of truth was approaching swiftly. Yet lurking in the back of her mind was the undeniable awareness that her fight was only just beginning. The clock was ticking down to her encounter with Caldwell, and the undertow of opposition continued to build. Who would she encounter during this pivotal confrontation, and what cards would she need to play? Emily entered the sterile office building with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed not just her presentation, but also how she would prevail against the odds. The sleek metal doors slid open, and she was greeted by the sterile chill of air conditioning that prickled her skin. She had prepared for this moment far too long to let anything stand in her way. As she rode the elevator to the 10th floor, she felt the weight of her grandfather's legacy pressing down on her. It wasn't just his methodologies she needed to defend. It was the essence of what he stood for in medicine: innovation, healing, and compassion. The flickering numbers lit up, each one marking her ascent toward the confrontation that felt monumental. Arriving on the floor, she stepped out, inhaling deeply as she approached Dr. Caldwell's glass-walled office. Peering through the transparent barrier, she saw him hunched over papers, a man who had become a gatekeeper of her destiny. The drive to prove herself surged anew within her, a reminder that doubt could only momentarily distract her. She was no longer an extension of her grandfather. She was a command unto herself, ready to shape her narrative. The seconds ticked tortuously, and she felt both anticipation and trepidation swirl within her. The corridor felt constricting, amplifying the stakes. She had meticulously drafted every slide, formulated her argument, and practiced her delivery. In her mind, the ethical dilemmas tied to her grandfather's work flipped like stained pages in a book, and she prepared for the scrutiny that might follow. "Emily," Caldwell's baritone voice broke her thoughts, and she stepped his office as he beckoned her in. "Glad you could make it. Let's see what you have." The slight arch of his brow showed that he was ready for a challenge. "Thank you for meeting with me," she replied, attempting to keep her voice steady, though she could hear the tremor of nerves beneath the surface. She positioned her laptop confidently on the desk, knowing that this device was not merely a prop, but a conduit for her grandfather's insights. "Let's get right to it," he said, gesturing for her to begin. And as the first slide illuminated the wall behind him, Emily felt a rush of adrenaline course through her. "Dr. Caldwell," she started, her gaze unwavering, "what if I told you that my grandfather's work, despite its controversies, holds a promise for not just healing, but also revolutionizing our current approach to medicine? Data shows patients responding exceptionally well to a combination of old and newer practices." She observed the narrowing of Caldwell's eyes as she pressed forward, weaving in revelations about ethical responsibilities and the importance of transparency. The tension in the room swirled, like a palpable fog, as she laid out the merits and flaws of her grandfather's advancements. Each statistic she shared underscored not only a historical legacy, but also their relevance in modern practices, igniting her passion fused with a sense of urgency. As she detailed the flaws that others had condemned, she caught herself. Was it hubris that made her bold, or clarity born from a place of genuine belief? The uncertainty danced like a shadow, but she pressed on, drawing connections that challenged the established norms in the field. Then Caldwell's face shifted subtly, a contemplative ear scratching at his chin. "But," he interjected, "you're aware that bringing this back into the fold doesn't just mean reviving your grandfather's methods. It invites scrutiny and potential backlash, especially from those whose careers have been built questioning his ethics." The air tinged with electricity. "I understand that, but with scrutiny comes growth, an opportunity to right the ship. My intention isn't to whitewash history. It's to learn from it and create a new legacy. Isn't that what medicine stands for?" As her words echoed off the glass walls, Emily felt the cracks in her confidence splinter slowly. She was challenging not just Caldwell, but the very construct of a profession that had at times been obstinate. "Bold, Emily," Caldwell noted, his expression shifting decisively. "But what can you propose to ensure this doesn't repeat past mistakes?" The question landed like a stone amid her river of thoughts. She had to muster every ounce of ingenuity she possessed. She hadn't merely come to discuss. She had come prepared with concepts, a partnership proposal that could potentially eliminate those responsible for dissonance before it could proliferate. "Let me explain my vision further and how we can incorporate significant checks and balances," she replied, her voice stronger now. But just as she began to elaborate, her phone vibrated insistently in her pocket. The notification felt like a coiled spring waiting to snap, and the momentary distraction tugged at the edges of her concentration. With Caldwell's penetrating gaze on her, she sensed the gravity of her resolve teetering, and she realized she may have underestimated the forces she was navigating. A sense of dread washed over her, mixing with the exhilaration of possibility. This wasn't merely a meeting, it was a crossroads defining a culmination of her aspirations, her grandfather's legacy, and the shadows of the past that threatened to rise again. As she reluctantly shifted her focus back to Caldwell, the weight of consequences lay heavy in the air. She had come too far to falter now, but the looming threat lurked outside the door. Little did she know, the real challenge awaited her not in the boardroom but beyond it, where the depths of opposition would test her resolve. Before she could draw in her breath, the door swung open with a soft creak, revealing a figure she never expected to see. "We need to talk." Emily's heart raced as she turned to face the person now standing in the doorway. It was Vanessa, her mentor, and the one person she thought might support her in this fight, not an adversary. Confusion clouded Emily's focus like a veil, but the urgency in Vanessa's eyes pierced through it. "Vanessa? Now? Here?" Emily's voice was barely above a whisper, her nerves simmering just beneath the surface. She had been prepared for a battle in front of Caldwell, but the last thing she anticipated was an ambush from within her own ranks. "Yes, and we need to be quick about it." Vanessa's tone was tight, an undercurrent of anxiety evident in her posture as she moved deeper into the office, closing the door softly behind her. The professional facade she typically radiated cracked momentarily, revealing an authenticity Emily hadn't seen in years. Caldwell's confusion was palpable as he glanced from Emily to Vanessa. "Is there a problem here, Vanessa?" "I need to speak with Emily, alone," she insisted, her eyes steady on Caldwell. Emily's mind raced to perceive the implications of this unexpected intervention. She had spent weeks refining her arguments against an established system, wielding her grandfather's legacy as both a sword and shield. But now, standing between her ambition and opportunity was someone she had long revered. "Please, just a moment," Emily asked Caldwell, forcing a calm demeanor. "I'll be right back." Caldwell's expression shifted, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism in his eyes. He nodded reluctantly, his gaze bouncing between the two women as he left the office, closing the door firmly behind him. "Emily," Vanessa began, her voice steady but urgent. "What's happening? Why are you here?" "I'm here because you're in over your head. Caldwell is a slippery opponent, and you need to know he doesn't play fair," she warned, her eyes narrowing in concern. "This presentation is just the tip of the iceberg. There are other forces at work here." Emily's stomach churned. She had prepared for skepticism from Caldwell, but hadn't accounted for warning signs from Vanessa. "What do you mean? I thought you were on my side." "I am," Vanessa shot back quickly, "but I need you to think critically. You're not just standing up for your grandfather, you're standing on a minefield. Some of the research you've prepared has already been flagged by his detractors. If you don't navigate this carefully, they will twist your words, and everything your grandfather worked for could be discredited again. The harsh reality of Vanessa's words hit Emily with a weight she hadn't anticipated. She felt the crumbling edges of her carefully crafted resolve. The stakes of her mission were higher than she had allowed herself to comprehend, and the ghosts of her grandfather's past loomed larger than the promise she aimed to build for his future. "Then tell me what I should do," Emily urged, her voice firm, determination folding back into her. "I can't back down now. I've come too far." Vanessa shook her head, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. "You need to recalibrate. Don't just fight fire with fire. Seek allies. Find out who you can trust before launching forward. You might have brilliant ideas, but without a team, they'll be buried under criticism. You must learn who the real players are in this game." Emily considered Vanessa's advice, grappling with it as if it were a lifeline tossed her way amidst turbulent seas. The gravity of having to forge new alliances felt both daunting and exhilarating. "You're right," Emily conceded, "but how?" "Start by reaching out beyond the usual circles," Vanessa advised. "There are researchers that respect your grandfather's work and have been waiting for someone to champion it. I can help you connect with them. But you need to understand, this isn't just about his legacy, it's about your own." The realization washed over Emily like fresh rain, revitalizing her thoughts, clearing the clutter. "I want to build something, for him, for me, but I'm scared." "Good." Vanessa stepped closer, her voice softer. "That fear means you're human. You have to channel it. Acknowledge the stakes, but don't let them paralyze you. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the strength to act in spite of it." As she absorbed the weight of Vanessa's words, a new determination arose within her, fueled by hope and the unyielding spirit of her grandfather's teachings. She could redefine her path, not just as his heir, but as an innovator in her own right. Just then, the office door creaked open slightly, interrupting their moment. Caldwell's shadow lurked beyond, gently nudging the door wider. "Everything all right in here?" Emily's heart thudding against her ribcage. The atmosphere shifted sharply, the prior camaraderie rapidly replaced with tension. She understood the importance of her next words, not only for the future of her presentation, but for her own burgeoning identity as a leader. "Perfectly fine," she responded, though the frail thread of resolve threatening to tangle her heart. Emily took a deep breath and nodded toward Vanessa, determination hardening her resolve. She had decisions to make, alliances to forge, and battles to win. "Let's finish this," she breathed softly to herself, steeling herself against the unknown. The battle was just beginning, and with it, an opportunity to emerge, not just as her grandfather's legacy, but as a pioneer in her own right. But as the door shut behind Caldwell, she felt an unsettling chill grip her spine. The stakes had risen, and while she might be able to rally allies, she already sensed formidable opponents lying in wait. The fight ahead promised revelations and surprises that could either uplift or shatter everything she aimed to accomplish. Emily couldn't help but wonder what awaited her just beyond the threshold of this moment. The time had come to face the unknown, and she could only hope the new path she'd carved wasn't the wrong one. The tension hung thick in the air, wrapping around Emily like a shroud as she turned to face Vanessa once more. Caldwell's presence had punctured the fragile bubble they had created within the office, and now the looming uncertainty pressed down on her. A quick reshuffling of her thoughts was essential. She couldn't afford mistakes. "Let's regroup," Vanessa suggested, keeping her voice low but intense. "I can arrange meetings with the researchers I mentioned. Trust me, they'll understand what you're trying to achieve." "Okay," Emily said, eager to act on this new strategy. Yet doubts crept into her mind like weeds, threatening to choke her resolve. Vanessa seemed invested, but how could she guarantee that these allies wouldn't also turn out to be just another set of challenges? As if reading her thoughts, Vanessa added, "Finding support doesn't just mean numbers, Emily. It's about alignment and vision. You're not just looking for people to stand beside you. You need them to believe in your mission." "Right," Emily nodded, a flicker of clarity beginning to emerge through the fog of anxiety. Yet even as she considered the potential benefits of these new alliances, the prospect of rejection loomed large. What if these esteemed researchers dismissed her efforts as unworthy of their time? Vanessa placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. "You have to remember that courage lies in the attempt, not just in the success. Each step you take will teach you something valuable, regardless of the outcome." Taking a deep breath, Emily felt the truth in Vanessa's words. These new connections didn't just represent stepping stones toward her goals, they also signified her growth as a professional navigating turbulent waters. She had long been shielded by her grandfather's legacy, but now she needed to carve her space on her own terms. In that moment of resolve, she understood that fear could no longer be a deterrent. Instead, it was a catalyst for action. "All right," she replied, her voice steadying. "If you help me connect with those researchers, I'll reach out to them and frame my story." "That's the spirit," Vanessa said, an approving smile breaking through her earlier tension. "You have a compelling narrative. Make your grandfather's work about the future, not just the past. Build on it. Innovate." Emily felt the warmth of possibility wrap around her. The path ahead was still fraught with uncertainty, but she could see glimmers of potential where there had only been shadows before. "What if we draft an outline together? I can tailor my presentation to include insights from these new allies," she proposed, her mind racing with a renewed vision. "Yes, leverage their expertise to reinforce your arguments. That'll make you less of a target and more of a leader." With renewed energy, they brainstormed ideas, weaving threads of knowledge and innovation together. Each suggestion opened doors Emily had not considered, building a robust framework that could withstand scrutiny. Vanessa's insights transformed her previous fears into points of strength within her presentation. But as they worked, a nagging thought returned to Emily. What about Caldwell? He had always been unpredictable, and now she was preparing to stand against him with a collection of new voices. Would he simply step back or escalate the confrontation? "Let's pause for a moment, though," Emily said, suddenly feeling the weight of the imminent showdown. "What if he tries to undermine my efforts with the new material?" Vanessa's gaze sharpened, professional resolve solidifying her demeanor. "Then you confront him, but with facts. Present your research methodically. Don't let him ensnare you in emotional traps. You've got the data behind you." Emily considered this, already imagining how to square off against Caldwell. The idea of a face-to-face battle had once terrified her, yet now it was beginning to feel like an opportunity, a rite of passage she needed to embrace fully. In that instant, she realized that this project was shaping into something much larger than just a legacy fight. It was about constructing her future as a knowledgeable leader ready to impact her field. Renewed determination coursed through her veins, igniting a fierce, unwavering conviction. As they continued their planning, a question loomed over her. What actions would Caldwell resort to if he perceived her growing strength? Would he fight dirty or find a way to align with her in this new landscape? Alan Caldwell was a seasoned player in the field, and as hard as she tried to steel herself against him, she understood that the real test was yet to come. The path she was preparing to take could either validate her triumph or dismantle everything she had worked for. As Emily took stock of this delicate balance between progress and potential peril, the sense of anticipation heightened. The time for strategic maneuvers was upon her, and every decision she made from this point forward could redefine her quest in unimagined ways. With a sigh of determination, her resolve hardened further. She had the chance not only to uphold her grandfather's legacy, but to craft her own. But could she command that kind of power? With her imminent presentation nearing, she pondered if each move would lead to her liberation or her undoing. Destiny seemed tantalizingly close, yet perilously out of reach at the same time. The challenge ahead would demand everything she had, and the shifting sands of loyalties only added to the urgency fueling her next steps. Emily stood on the precipice of transformation, a decision to be made that could shatter expectations. Would she rise to invigorate her narrative, or would she risk her aspirations on uncertain alliances? The stakes loomed high as she prepared to reveal the strength she had yet to discover within herself. But just as the momentum threatened to peak, another doubt crept in. Would she truly be able to outmaneuver the very traits Caldwell had over the years expertly honed? And more hauntingly, was she willing to confront the moral dilemma of leadership to protect her vision? Emily's days blurred into a montage of research, strategy meetings, and sleepless nights. Each waking moment was consumed by thoughts of her upcoming presentation and the uncertainty it brought. As she immersed herself deeper in her preparations, the weight of expectation felt both exhilarating and paralyzing. Vanessa's confidence in Emily continued to fuel her determination. Together, they mapped out her narrative arc, anchoring it not only in her grandfather's legacy, but also in her vision for innovative change. This was about breaking free from mere legacy. It was about breathing new life into a respected but stagnant field. In her quiet moments, Emily fought against her doubts, questioning whether she had truly grasped the intellectual weight of the argument she was building. Could she articulate complex ideas eloquently enough to engage the renowned researchers Vanessa had promised to connect her with? The more she distrusted her capabilities, the more she felt compelled to prove herself, not just to others, but to herself. The soft murmur of encouragement from Vanessa had transformed into an urgent clarion call, echoing in her mind, "You need to lead." One evening, while reviewing data from her grandfather's original research, she encountered a startling revelation. A chart, buried in a sea of numbers, revealed patterns that could be pivotal for her presentation. It felt as if she had unearthed a hidden jewel, and the realization ignited a spark within her. This discovery could bridge the gap between her grandfather's work and her progressive vision. Driven by adrenaline, Emily meticulously crafted that insight into the core of her presentation, each word helping to reinforce her emerging identity as a pioneer. The tension within her transformed into a potent elation. She was transforming fear into fuel. She envisioned not just standing before attendees, but commanding their attention with confidence. Amid this newfound clarity, however, the shadow of Caldwell loomed larger. It was evident that he would not let her ascent go unchallenged. Emily recalled their previous meetings, his dismissive tone, the condescension. Would he attempt to discredit her, citing her inexperience? Or worse, would he belittle her deeply personal motivations, painting her as someone merely riding the coattails of his predecessor? The thought angered her. She had endured far too long in silence, measuring herself against the enormity of expectations. Caldwell might be formidable, but she was no longer a puppet in the legacy of others. The layers of her identity were unfurling. She was not just a granddaughter, but a woman poised to craft a new narrative shaped by intelligence and insight. With renewed energy surging through her, Emily decided to confront Caldwell, not just on the battlefield of their professional ambitions, but beyond it. She would stand her ground and allow her passion to speak louder than his restraints. The stakes were rising, and her strengths were laid bare before her. She realized she was reinventing herself through this challenge. As the week wore on, the meetings with researchers began to materialize, each connection solidifying her vision further. She presented her draft outline, sharing the newly discovered insights, careful to invite feedback that would bolster her arguments. Each supportive reaction dismantled the fear that had once restrained her. Confidence propelled her into this new realm of collaboration, drawing upon her allies while carefully nurturing her originality. However, there remained a lingering question in her mind. How would Caldwell respond to this fresh wave of development? The days until the presentation fell away like autumn leaves, and with each passing moment, Emily could sense the storm brewing. The unpredictability of his response cast a shadow over her hard-earned momentum. As she approached the final edits of her presentation, a chilling thought struck her. If her unveiling was met with hostility, would she have the composure to counter it effectively? And if Caldwell did resort to underhanded tactics, could she maintain her moral compass while advocating fiercely for her vision? The night before the big day, she sat alone in her office, her heart pounding as ideas rushed to the surface. There was no turning back. The moment of truth was at hand, and the distinction between leading or yielding loomed ominously in the air. With her resolve tightening, she whispered to herself, the time had come to face him. But as the weight of that affirmation settled in her chest, she grappled with the very real possibility that the confrontation might reveal more about herself than she had ever imagined. Would she conquer her self-doubt and emerge as the leader she strived to be? Or would the crossfires of ambition shatter her resolve? Emily closed her eyes, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The knot of uncertainty now braided tightly with a newfound clarity. The moment was upon her, and she would either redefine her path or watch it slip away. How could she seize her voice when the noise of dissent threatened to drown it? The answer to that question lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to unfold. Emily awoke the next morning, her mind a tempest of thoughts as the sun penetrated the curtains, igniting flickers of hope in her heart. This was it, her chance to solidify her presence in a field steeped in tradition. She sat up in bed, contemplating the steps she had taken, yet feeling the weight of uncertainty still anchored within her. Today wasn't merely about her presentation. It was about staking her claim in a domain that had long felt out of reach. As she prepared for the day, every action felt laced with significance. The way she tied her shoes seemed to echo a newfound sense of purpose. She zipped her blazer with the conviction of someone donning armor for battle. With each deliberate movement, she bolstered herself against the specter of self-doubt. Stepping out of her apartment, she was greeted by the brisk air, a reminder that change often required discomfort. Emily took a deep breath and envisioned the audience's faces. No longer would she shrink under their scrutiny. Today, she would embody the wisdom she had unearthed and the vision she had crafted. On the way to the venue, she replayed her lines in her head, fully aware that this was an opportunity to present herself authentically. She had spent countless hours honing her argument, but now it was time to infuse it with her own voice. The data patterns that had emerged from her grandfather's research would not only serve as evidence, but also as a testament to her lineage, an inheritance of knowledge she intended to honor and elevate. When she arrived, the air buzzed with anxious energy. Colleagues and researchers moved about, engaged in animated discussions about their contributions and findings. Emily spotted Caldwell standing by the registration desk, his presence a magnet for attention. He was deep in conversation, exuding an air of superiority that filled the room. She felt a thickening knot in her stomach, an instinctual warning to be on guard. This was where she would face him, not just as a rival, but as an embodiment of all her fears. As the presentations began, Emily found herself a mere breath away from the confrontation that loomed. Each speaker, with their polished delivery, intensified her resolve. She observed how they engaged the audience, their confidence palpable, antitheses to her own trepidation. She knew that to inspire others, she first had to captivate herself. Finally, it was her turn. Walking up to the podium, she felt a rush of adrenaline. With every step, Emily reminded herself of the work that had filled her late nights. She thought of Vanessa's encouragement, her grandfather's research, and the tapestry of ideas that had brought her to this moment. She positioned herself confidently before the microphone, ground zero of her ambition. As she launched into her presentation, the words flowed, each phrase threaded with passion and insight. She drew on the research insights, framing them within the context of possibility and change. The audience began to lean in, their interest piqued by the synergy she was building between past and future. But amid her growing momentum, the specter of Caldwell rose like an unexpected storm cloud, lurking just beyond the periphery of her vision. She caught sight of his dismissive smirk as she brought up the very patterns that had ignited her research. His subtle yet piercing glare sharpened her focus. Could he dismantle her carefully constructed argument? Would he present obstacles that would leave her reeling? Yet, just as self-doubt threatened to drown her, she drew strength from the honesty she had infused in her delivery. The story entwined with her aspirations transcended her fear of rejection. In that moment, she resolved to answer any potential challenges head-on. This wasn't just about defending her perspectives. It was about validating her existence in an arena that seemed designed to diminish her. Suddenly, a hand shot up from the audience. Emily's heart raced. It was Caldwell, his voice slicing through the air like a blade. "While the data is intriguing," he began, a condescending smile gracing his lips, "you're simply repackaging your grandfather's work without offering anything genuinely novel." The challenge hung pregnant in the air. Emily could feel the weight of the moment. The tension metamorphosed into an electric pulse. It was a lifeline, an invitation to dive deeper into her argument. Did she shrink back, yielding to the existing power dynamics, or did she rise to the occasion? And in this crucial moment, as she gathered her composure, Emily realized that the battle wasn't only against Caldwell, but also against her past uncertainties. This was where the narrative shifted. Could she reclaim her voice, or would she let his dismissal define her capabilities? As confidence surged forth within her, a realization dawned. Perhaps the true transformation lay not just in public opinion, but in her willingness to confront the shadows that had lingered far too long. With the air thick with suspense, her response brewed within, the words almost ready to unleash the storm she had been harboring. Would this confrontation redefine her journey, or would it skew her vision once more? The answer teetered on the edge as she steeled herself to face him, readying her conviction for the looming battle ahead. Emily faced Caldwell with a newfound clarity that eclipsed the nervousness that had once threatened to engulf her. This was her moment to rise. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her grandfather's legacy behind her, and felt a powerful surge of determination. "Dr. Caldwell, what I'm presenting today is not merely a repackaging of my grandfather's work," she asserted firmly. Her voice resonated with conviction. "This is an evolution, an opportunity to utilize his innovative ideas within a contemporary context, to address flaws that his methods may have overlooked. History should not define us. Rather, we must learn from it." The audience's attention shifted, the murmurs of curiosity swirling around her. Caldwell seemed momentarily taken aback, but his eyes glinted with challenge. "But are you equipped to claim this narrative? The risks of resurrecting controversial methodologies carry significant weight. You'll need to navigate political waters that may sink even the most seasoned professionals. Her pulse quickened as she realized he was trying to impose doubt. Yet instead of shrinking back, she seized the opportunity. You're right, Dr. Caldwell. Navigating this requires responsibility and humility. I'm reaching out to trusted colleagues and researchers who share this vision, academics who see merit in this exploration. This collaboration will not just validate my efforts, it guarantees a rigorous approach, safeguarding against pitfalls of the past. Emily's words hung in the air, heavy with intention. She could sense the audience's shifting perspective, their interest morphing into a collective breath of anticipation. Their nodding heads encouraged her to continue unfolding her narrative until she found her rhythm, detailing the balance her grandfather's research could achieve and dispelling myths that had cloaked it for years. The more she spoke, the more conviction resonated within her as she articulated the profound bond between the past and the future, bridging traditional methods with modern perspectives. She showcased the intersections that could lead to groundbreaking advances, strategies to ensure ethical practice while embracing innovation. With each point she made, a sense of liberation enveloped her. The stakes of presenting her grandfather's work actually fueled her own chances at redefining her professional identity. She was not just defending a legacy, she was carving a new path that reflected her growth as a physician and as a leader. In this moment, as the presentation crescendoed, she caught Caldwell's shifting expression shed the veil of disdain. Fascination replaced skepticism, but the real triumph was that she was no longer subject to his judgment. She had moved beyond him. She wrapped up her presentation with a powerful challenge to the audience. Let us not fear the shadows of the past, but rather illuminate the path ahead. We have an ethical responsibility to advance care in our communities, utilizing every tool, every insight at our disposal. Together, we can embrace innovation that honors the wisdom inherited from our predecessors while paving the way to a future grounded in integrity. As she stepped back and surveyed the audience, a wave of applause broke out, its resonance a testament to her transformation. She realized in that instant that her genuine voice had cut through the uncertainty, and mundane musings lay demolished in the wake of her passion. Later, as she left the venue, adrenaline coursed through her veins as the weight of self-doubt evaporated. She felt a lightness in her step. She had taken the leap and soared. A sense of clarity washed over her. She had conquered not just the fears of others, but her own inner demons. Moments turned into hours, and before she knew it, a message appeared on her phone. It was from Dr. Caldwell, requesting an informal roundtable discussion about potential collaborations based on her insights. The exhilaration of acceptance surged through her. He was finally acknowledging her capabilities and the work she was passionate about. Emily smiled. She had not only rekindled her grandfather's legacy, but woven her own distinct narrative of innovation and resilience. Rebuilding her professional life wasn't just about proving herself, it was about breathing life into what had seemingly been discarded. She felt empowered, ready to advocate passionately for medical evolution and to garner respect not only for her grandfather's contributions, but also for her strength and vision. At that moment, she understood that triumph was not defined merely by external validation, but by recognizing one's worth and potential. She stepped into the world anew, a confident force, ready to navigate whatever challenges lay ahead. Now is the time to seize this powerful moment and spread the inspiration. You need to subscribe now to our channel because this is just the beginning of our journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support more transformative stories. Comment your reactions and insights about Emily's evolution and how she conquered her challenges. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a boost of motivation to overcome their own struggles. Your support matters in bringing these stories to life.